So slope-intercept form means get y by itself. Y is by itself, and then you have some number in front of x, plus or minus another number, depending on what you have. And so in this case, you have a 1/2 with the y. To get rid of that, you should have just multiplied everything by 2. And so to get this in slope-intercept form, it would look like this. Y equals 2x minus 6. You have to multiply this side by 2 to get rid of the 1/2. You multiply the x by the 2 and the -3 by the 2. And then to graph it, you would have started at -6 on the y-axis, and you would have gone up 2 and over 1. Up 2 and over 1. And your graph should have looked something like this. For this next one, you needed to move the 3x over, and then you needed to move the 2y over, and then you need to divide everything by -2. And so when you do that, moving the 3x over would have done a -3x. Moving the 2y over would give you the positive y. And then dividing everything by 2, dividing the -3 by 2 would give you -3/2. Dividing the 8 by 2 would give you a 4. And so to graph this one, you would have started at +4 on the y-axis here. And then your slope is -3 over 2. So down 3 and over 2. On my particular graph, going up and left would have taken me off the graph. So I went down and right. For the first one, it's almost in slope-intercept form, right? The x and the b are on the other side. The problem is that you have something in front of your y. It's a 1/2. To get rid of a fraction, just multiply by the reciprocal. In this case, the reciprocal is just a 2. So if I multiply 1/2 by 2, it cancels out, and it's just a 1 in front of the y, which is what I want. But then I have to multiply every single piece by that 2. And so when I do that, I get the 2x and the 6 here. And now I have the y by itself. And that is slope-intercept form. All right. And graphing it, -6. And then anytime you have a whole number for a slope, it's just over 1. So my numerator there would be 2. My denominator would be 1, which is why I went up 2 and right 1. We have written linear equations. Given certain things, on your quiz, you did have some slope and y-intercept. So we're going to start there with what is familiar. And then we are going to move into different things that they can give us in light of the slope-intercept and in light of standard form, depending on what they're asking for. Typically, when they ask for just an equation of a line, then they are asking for slope-intercept. If they want standard form, they will usually say standard form. But you do want to be able to recognize if you have standard form, and let's say it's a multiple choice or like a standardized test, and you notice that all of your answers are in y equals mx plus b form, then make sure you convert your answer so that maybe your answer's there and you just don't recognize it, and vice versa. Let's say you have a multiple choice type question on a standardized test, and you did it in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. When you look at all your answer choices, you don't see your answer, but you see a lot of ax plus by equals c type answers. So then you want to know how to convert it back. So that's why we've kind of been going back and forth, because you may use one type more often, but you need to know, given certain information, how do I get to one type of equation versus the other? And so we've done part of it, and now we're going to start introducing different things they can give us that will help us get to the different types of equations. In this case, we've done this. It says, write the equation of a line. So they are asking for something like y equals mx plus b. That's an equation of a line. With a slope of 2/3 and a y-intercept of 0, -5. Well, they gave us the m and they gave us the b. We've done this particular one. We're just going to fill it in. Y equals 2/3. That's my m. And my x is my b is -5. And so that's really all you have to do if you're given those 2 points. But sometimes you have different points, and they are not necessarily the slope and the y-intercept. So let's look at this example 2 here. They gave us a point, just an xy. They did not give us our y-intercept, and then they did give us our slope. So they gave us an x and a y, and they gave us our m. What are we missing from our slope-intercept form? We're missing the b. And so when they give this to you, you can use your y equals mx plus b to solve for your b. All right? You just fill in your y. Well, in this case, my y is 5. You fill in your m. They told us the slope was 3. You fill in your x. In this case, your x is 1. And then we have a really simple equation to solve, right? On this right-hand side, 3 times 1, well, that just gives us 3. And to solve for that b, I am going to subtract the 3 over. And so I am going to get that b equals 2. Did they ask me to give the y-intercept? No, they said write the equation. So I need to write my y equals mx plus b, but what's the only thing I actually need to fill in to answer the question they're asking for? Well, the m and the b. I solved for the b, they gave me the m. So my answer is going to look like this, y equals mx plus b. That is the answer to the question that they are asking. So they gave me my slope, but they did not give me the b, which is what I needed. I used the other information they gave me to solve for what they were asking for. All right, so in this case, they want us to write the equation of the line passing through the point, -5, 6, with a slope of -1/2. This is identical, except we have fractions to deal with. All right, so we are going to do exactly the same thing. We are going to use our y equals mx plus b. And we're going to see that they gave us an x, they gave us a y, and they gave us the m. So we're going to say y equals m times x plus b. All right. Again, multiply. But now we have -1/2 and -5 gives us +5/2. So if I want to solve for b, I am going to solve just like I did before. But the difference here is I need a common denominator. It is 6 over 1. So I'm going to make that 12 over 2. Everyone can see that 12 over 2 is the same thing as 6, right? It's just 6 with a denominator of 2. It cancels here. Over here I have 12 halves minus 5 halves. That's going to give me 7 halves. So again, I have just solved for my b. I am not finished with this problem. They asked for the equation of the line, which means I need to rewrite this plugging in those two. I now have both of them. Y equals, they gave me the m, -1/2, x, and I solved for the b. That is the answer to the question they asked. All right. Write the equation of the line passing through the point 1, -6 with a slope of 0. A slope of 0. What type of line has a slope of 0, just by the way? Yeah, it's a horizontal line, okay? So we already know this is going to be a special case. The question is, how is this going to work out? So I'm going to show you the math behind it, and then I'm going to show you the shortcut. All right, so the math behind it is the same thing we've been doing. We have an x, we have a y, we have an m, all right? So we're going to say y equals m times x plus b. So if I do this, 0 plus anything is just itself. So you can see that b equals -6. If I wrote this in slope-intercept form, it would look like this. Y equals 0x minus 6. Well, I don't typically write 0x. What is 0x? It's just 0, right? And so if I were to write this equation, it would look like this. If you have a slope of 0, you do not have to go through this whole process. The slope of 0 will always be y equals some number, all right? That will always be y equals a number. If you look at your point, that number will always be the y value they gave you, okay? So if you have a slope of 0, you're just going to say, well, it's going to be y equals, and then go figure out what y they gave you, -6. Okay? -6. So slope of 0 is always going to be just y equals a number. And if they gave you a point, it's going to be the y value of that point. Write the equation of the line passing through the point 1, 3 and the point 4, negative 2. All right. So what's the difference between this? Well, now they've given us 2 points. All right. So really, in your y equals mx plus b, to use that particular formula for a line, we don't have enough information. All right. So if we don't have enough information, we're going to use what we have to help us get what we need. We can take those 2 points and we can find our slope. We've already done this. All right. We can use this and find our slope. If you'll remember your slope formula. So if I am trying to solve for that m, I'm going to subtract my y's. That's going to be my numerator. I'm going to subtract my x's. That's going to be my denominator. And so if I do that, I'm just going to go through and figure out what my slope is. Y2, the way that I labeled it, that's negative 2, minus y1, that is 3. X2 is 4, minus x1 is a 1. And so if I do this, I'm going to say negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. 4 minus 1 is 3. My slope is negative 5/3. All right, negative 5/3. Now I need to actually solve for the b. So I have the m part. I solved for that. I'm done with that piece. But I need to solve for b. I can use either point to solve for b. It doesn't matter. Whichever one's easier for you to use, you may use. And so if I choose to do this first one, I would say y, well, that's a 3, equals m. I just solved for m, negative 5/3, times x. In this case, x is 1, plus a b. All right, and then I'm just going to solve. 3 equals negative 5/3 plus b. I need to add 5/3 to both sides. I need a common denominator, 3 over 1. That's the same thing as 9 over 3, right? 9 over 3 equals 3. So I have 9/3 plus 5/3. My b is going to equal 14/3. So now I have my m and I have my b. I'm ready to write the equation, which is what they asked me to do. The equation then is going to be y equals my m, negative 5/3 x, plus my b, plus 14/3. All right. So once again, we have to solve for our slope. So before I can do anything with my y equals mx plus b, I need to have that m. And so I am going to label these and calculate my slope. I have 2 minus 4 over 7 minus 7. What's the problem here? I have a 0. This is an undefined slope. All right, so earlier I had a 0 slope. What type of line did I have? Horizontal. Undefined slope. That is a vertical line. So undefined slope will always indicate a vertical line. A vertical line will always, so undefined slope will always give you x equals some number. To figure out what that number is, go back to your points. You'll notice your points had the same x because it will always be that way for an undefined slope. That is the number I'm going to use for this. X equals that 7. So if I have an undefined slope, it's going to be x equals a number. If I have a 0 slope, it's going to be y equals a number, okay? All you have to do is go back to the point that they gave you. If it is x equals a number, use your x coordinate. If it is y equals a number, use your y coordinate. All right? That is a special case. right? You can use graphs to then create a line that will help you predict if they want to figure out what's going on or what would happen going forward. And so they have some historical information. It says the planning committee for the city of Brownsville used census data to project the growth of the city, determine the estimated rate of growth, and write the function rule describing the estimate. Okay? And so they've given us a graph. Well, if I have a graph with like this, I'm probably not going to be able to walk it and figure out my slope because it's usually not to scale, meaning you'll notice that my years are 2009, 10, 11, 12, but we definitely go up. We go up by 1,000s here. And so it's going to be a little harder to do it just by counting. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pick 2 points, this being our X and this being our Y. In this case, they chose 2010 at a population of 56,500. And so that's my first point right here. This point, my X value is 2010. My Y value is 56,500. And you can really pick any 2 points. This is just what they chose here. The next one that they chose was 2015. So they jumped down here and chose 2015 at 59,000. And so that's our next set of points. 2015 and 59,000. All right. So they've given us an XY and XY, exactly like they've done before. And when they say determine the estimated rate of growth and write the function rule, they are saying write the slope-intercept form of this equation. The function rule, the rule is the equation. That's what that means, okay? So we're going to do exactly the same thing that we would have done with any xy's. We have 2 points. We are going to calculate our slope. And they're big numbers, but don't let that throw you off. So we're going to calculate our slope, subtracting our y's and subtracting our x's, all right? So 59,000 minus 56,500 gives us 2,500. 2015 minus 2010 gives us 5. So our slope here is 500. What does that mean? Well, our y value was the people or the population. And this is the denominator was years. So that's why you see that it says people per year. That's your population growth per year. Think of it like a unit rate that they just solved for, okay? So 500 is my slope. Well, we're not done yet, right? Because they want the function rule. So I have to figure out my y-intercept. You have to go back to the fact that this, while it represents y-intercept here, they didn't go all the way down. And so I'm actually looking for a 0 when I'm calculating this. Is actually going to be a negative number. So even though it looks like this is my y-intercept, this is not 0. So they're not showing you the entire graph all the way down to a 0 type thing to do a function rule. So you need to go back to your y equals mx plus b to actually solve for it. You can't just look at your graph. Whereas if this were an xy where it was 0, 0 that you had as your corner, you could just look and see what your y-intercept was. But in this case, you can't see your y-intercept because they don't actually give you a 0, 0 as a starting point, if that makes sense. So what we're going to do here is we are going to actually use y equals mx plus b. We can use either one of them. They actually used this one. So we're going to say y equals m times x plus b. And we get ginormous numbers here. I promise I'll never give you numbers quite this large. You multiply those, you get like 1,005,000, something like that. And you get a b of a negative number. Because remember, while we can't have a negative population, we are doing this as an estimate, okay? An estimate. And so it's not going all the way down to 0, so we have to use this guy. So if I want to write my slope, I'm going to say 500 is my slope, and this would be my y-intercept. Just to point out a quick terminology, rate of ascent right here, rate of ascent. Anytime they ask for a rate of movement, that is slope, okay? So when they ask for rate of ascent, you'll notice that is your slope. Equation representing the altitude, that is your mx plus b. And remember, f of x and y are the same thing. So if you wrote it with y, that's fine. You don't have to write it with f of x right now. But just know when they ask for a rate, they're asking for slope.